talking to? What are you trying to prove to everyone else? Who is superior? How is your vision clearer than anyone else? Your head's in the sky, in flight, but you will crash and burn. But you will crash it!
Welcome to Agency Land, a podcast about advertising ambition and the lies we tell ourselves to survive both. I'm Jai Smith, and this is your survival guide. Today's guest was born into the industry. His parents ran a TV ad production company and told him two things. You need to start your own agency, and you're going to be washed up by 45. He started it naked, he pioneered comms planning, and then he shaped everything that followed. He went over to New York to land a role as a strategy director at BBH, despite never having written a brief or worked with a creative team. He described himself as a chef who has never seen a kitchen. He spent 2 years making zero and wondered if he'd ever be found out. Then he led the comms planning for PlayStation 4 launch, the highest selling console in gaming history. From there, he moved to BBDO, built the comms team from 4 to 17, won a Webby Digital Agency of the Year for 2 years running. Then he walked away, not burnt out, but at the top of his game. He took a year-long sabbatical, came back, and then rather than starting an agency, he built the strategy finishing school, which now has over 4,000 strategists from companies like Google, Netflix, White & Kennedy. And today he consults to Apple, Disney, and a bunch of other companies from the US. Please welcome Julian Cole. How are you, mate?
Very good. That was an amazing intro. I feel like we know each other for a while, but
Yeah.
I feel like you really got a lot of my past and my history. Probably did a better intro than I could do of myself. So thanks for that.
That's you're very, very welcome. We have known each other a long time. You know, it's funny to think that you and I really cut our teeth like around social media stuff, and that used to be a topic, let alone having a club. What has changed since, say, 2007, 2008 when we met for you? What's been the biggest shift in the agency landscape you've seen?
I think there's two things that I'd separate. My own journey through the creative agency landscape changed, and I think I'll talk about that because that's something personally I know and probably can talk to easier. And then I can think about that second question of how has the agency landscape changed. I think what I realized when I started off in a social agency was there was a cap to how far upstream you could go. And that always frustrated me when I started off as a strategist. I thought I was going to be writing the strategy for the brand where you were kind of quite far downstream and you didn't get as many of those opportunities on the bigger brands, right? Like if you can go smaller brands, then that was fine. You could do more strategy work. But when it came to the big brands, it was really hard. And so when I saw that, I realized that I probably needed to be in a creative agency because at that time, creative agencies were the ones that were doing the big positioning work and kind of leading the charge from a creative advertising point of view. So that is kind of what led me to go, okay, I need to change. I need to get up into the agency that's making those bigger decisions because I think that's where strategy can be most powerful if you're having impact over more of the results. And that honestly is what strategy is. It's like coming up with a plan with the limited resources that you have, being time and money. And so the further down you the game's already won or lost. You're kind of moving at millimeters.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's changed as a concept. And I think that means in the industry, and this is something that I still think holds true, is that like it's finding like right fit for your agency size or the agency that you're working at. If you're a small company and you want to do more of that strategic work, then go find a agency at the same size that's going to give you that opportunity. Or if you've got a relationship with a CMO who allows you to be at that top level, which is what I think Naked did. They were able to kind of come over the top, very rare, and we haven't seen it since. They were able to like sit above creative and media agencies in this weird just strategy world and then have a little bit of creative execution.
Was that a
Yeah.
relationship with the leadership and the companies? Because you're so right about Naked. It was a unique agency position of almost being the objective overseer, and I mean that in a positive way. Was
Yeah.
that a leadership relationship thing where those leaders had great relations with CMOs, or was it a positioning thing from that agency?
I so I wasn't. I was too junior to be able to get purview into how they got those
Mm,
relationships. However, reading between the lines and seeing what I've seen now, being a little bit more senior in the industry, I think they had to have both. I don't
yeah,
think you can come in and go, hey, we've got this point of view. And until I feel like their big relationship was probably Coca-Cola to begin with, I want to say. It might have been another brand, but I think one of the key founders, there was three key founders, I think one of them had the deep relationships with
yeah,
the CMO level. It wasn't Matt Baxter or Adam Ferrer, it was the third partner
yeah,
who had those relationships. And then I think they had a point of view that just hit in the market at that moment. But I feel like those opinions happen all the time. Like
yeah.
everyone's got a like strong point of view, but they had the package. And then if you went into their offices, you bought in on everything because it was so cool. Like I think did you come in, Jai, to the
I
offices?
remember.
Yeah.
Like this is from my memory. It was the first white office I'd seen, open plan, but almost ludicrously open plan. Am I thinking of the right spot?
Yeah, well, they had this really weird, like maybe in this is where we were talking about design decisions. They had like just weird rooms, like they had the library room with like fake doors, hidden
That's right.
doors, and then they had all this really, it was like Victorian era um like furniture, like all this like rich reds and
Yeah.
mahoganies. But then and then other weird rooms that were completely weird. They had an amazing interior designer, Paulie, who worked there. And she just got the best. There was like a meeting room, which was like the bathroom, which was an actual bathtub. And then
That's
they had
right.
something over the
Yeah.
top. And then they had the golf course, like all the places you come up with ideas, like in the
Yeah.
bathroom on the golf course. So then they had the
Yes.
golf course room
Right.
as well. And so it was just really well executed. And you honestly were surrounded. I always think that about my time at Naked, like with the smartest people that I worked with. And
Mm.
so I think they had that going for them. But it is unusual. Everyone always talks like you always say. And if you kind of didn't grow up in this area, you probably don't see it as much. But every person who's a millennial or older will always say, is it the new Naked moment? Are we having a Naked moment? I
Yeah.
saw an
Wow.
article like a month ago saying it's now time for Naked 4.0 or whatever. And
Really? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out. But
So yeah.
it was such a unique proposition, and having themed rooms now post COVID almost seems like somebody looking like, why are you setting all this money on fire? But I'm such a believer in that idea that spaces do create cultures, and you can't separate them.
Yeah.
That I think just from a thinking point of view, but you're right, that impact it can have on a client really does shape how that next meeting is going to go. And I don't think
Yeah.
we can ever underplay that.
No. Yeah, so that was big. So sorry, I have completely gone on a tangent, but I'm going to get back to you.
That's
I'm going to get back to you
fine.
to your question. Your question was, how do I think the industry has
Yeah.
changed? So, uh, the first thing would have to be the biggest significant change because we grew up in social media,
Mm,
which I think was additive to the industry.
yeah.
I don't think it may have taken away jobs from traditional agency, had a smaller budget, then to the social, carved down a little
Mm.
bit to the social agency. It wasn't that big. But then it all kind of consolidated back in the 2010s.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, what you're seeing is the gutting again. But this time, I don't think AI is additive as much. It's more additive for the client, where I feel like
Yeah.
we're not seeing as many junior strategy or junior roles come through because idea generation, the thinking, what I call thinking theater, like the actual
Mm.
time it takes to think is used to be a job for junior strategists. So they'd do a consumer journey or a competitor analysis and
Yep.
that'd take them like 2 weeks. Now you
Yeah.
do it in like 20 minutes with Claude and it's like 80% of there. And then that would have been what the strategy director would have done anyway, was finish that like last 20%. And so I feel like we're not getting those junior roles through anymore. So what we're
Yeah.
seeing is more, at least from a strategy perspective, more of those senior strategy roles, with less people coming through at the bottom end.
And is that a lived experience piece? Because, I'll never forget somebody said to me, you can't be a strategist until you've lived a little. And, I think I was 24 or 25, and I'm like, well, that can't be true because I can still think about things. But there is a certain experience that I think those really senior strategists get from, I've had 100 briefs, I've lived in the real world, even if they're kind of conflating their own experience with their audience experiences. Or do you think it's just people who know how to position themselves within an agency?
I've definitely seen, because now I've run the strategy finishing school, I've seen, thousands of strategists go through. I've seen strategists who've come out at 21 who can do the job better than most.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, wow.
I think there is a skill to the craft and understanding the fundamentals and learning the fundamentals of strategy, and that can happen at any age.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't believe it's an age thing. I think the more senior you get, just generally, I think generally for most people, they're going to get more strategic and they're going to understand. And if they've worked with good strategists, they'll understand the fundamentals of what it looks like. Their sensor is up around things like let's take attention, for instance,
Yep.
which is what a strategist has to look like. Attention being the push and pull of a goal is taking you one way, the consumer goal, and then the consumer problem is bringing you back the other way.
Yep.
The older you get, the faster you get at identifying them, and the more
Yeah.
confident you are at going, no, that's attention, that's a strategy territory, we're going to build something around that. Whereas maybe when you're younger, you're kind of spraying 60 slides and hoping someone will find the strategy for you.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I really love that idea of you can identify tensions quicker because you've kind of like, it's almost like a muscle, right? It's a reflex where no matter, even if somebody just talks to me and they give me two ideas that are slightly contradictory, I'm like, oh, great. My brain just won't start ticking along of like, oh yeah, there's a tension there between those two thoughts you've had. And this is probably what it means. And I'm, talking about a coffee I'm trying to order at this point in time.
Yeah.
If we throw back to you, how old were you when you went from Sydney to New York at BBH?
I think I was 25.
And you said you'd never written a brief, you'd never worked with a creative team. And this is when that great line, like as soon as I found this line, was like a chef who had never seen a kitchen. What were those first months like? Who were you in those first months?
Shocking. They were the worst. I was so confused. So I had worked at a company called TCO, which was a video production company that was not a creative agency. We stole work off the creative agencies, the stuff that they didn't want to do or the stuff around the sides. We just pitched ourselves as like all in one shop, like which had a position, which smart, right? Very smart.
Yeah. I spoke to Clive last week, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. He is an amazing salesperson and like would be dogmatic at getting signing those clients, and did amazing because honestly he was able to elevate me to these amazing clients that then probably put me on the radar of BBH. So when I went over, I had been working on Coca-Cola, Uncle Toby's, that didn't really translate, Foster's, and Boost Mobile. And so they were names that translated into that market. So even though we weren't doing the big parts, we were doing executional strategy way more. And so I was brought on as a strategy director, but we didn't have a creative team at TCO. And so we didn't write briefs. We just got the client brief and then we came up with the creative campaign. Like that's all we did. And I guess the way I pitched myself when I went to BBH was I'm a digital strategist. I know how to like connect all the pipes and I'm good at that, which was true. But I had just walked into a traditional agency where they've got a traditional process of the strategist writes the creative brief and then hands off and then they make the thing. And my value is all after what I thought was the idea. But then what I came to realize was the connecting of the pipes and making this plan integrated, because that's the muscle that creatives didn't have, that the brand strategist didn't have. So I was able to fit into that world. But because my name was strategist, I was expected to write creative briefs as well. And I'm like, oh God, I'm like, this is not my forte. And then I'm around these people who've got the same title as me or even underneath me who are like, I was strategy director, they were senior strategist. And I just felt such, it was imposter syndrome. I'm trying to, I just felt not like a fraud. I felt like a fraud. So I'm like, what am I doing here? These people are like way smarter than me. Like I remember one of the first briefs that I worked on was this really funny campaign for, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm in America. It's like, it was Justin Bieber had invested in a like child don't drive and text app or something, some weird, really
An
weird
app
thing.
that doesn't make a lot of sense.
And like it was just a safety app of some type. I think it was either you either tracked your children. It might have been, and I think they're doing great work now. I think it was called Life 360, or it was like that. Anyway, they're like, Julian, that's yours. You run with it. And I remember doing the work and coming back with the creative presentation, and they gave me a senior strategist or someone who was meant to be below me. She ended up rewriting the whole deck because she's like, this doesn't make sense. You don't get strategy. This isn't strategic. And she was the same age as me and amazing. Like I ended up working with her on PlayStation and we worked out what our roles were. But at that starting point, can you imagine like someone underneath you, a junior, going, hey, you don't have this. I'm going to rewrite this for you.
Yeah.
And so, insecurity at an all-time high. And I you talked through there a bit as well of like 2 years of not making work. So that was the other thing. It really hit me hard because in Australia, I was used to making so much work. And then over there, I was in a creative agency that was trying to prove themselves in digital. And I only realized this, this is all hindsight stuff. In the moment, you're just like so freaking confused. Like, why is a junior rewriting my deck? Why am I not making any work? Do I just suck? Does my work suck? But what I realized was I was brought in to help pioneer like this digital, them doing a digital push so they didn't lose more work to digital agencies. And I could help them show that they could create integrated work. But I was, I didn't make any work for 2 years because we were almost like, we didn't have that work. We were pitching saying, hey, actually give us back to us. Give us the digital and social work back. And so
you were just on the tools all the time, just showing that you could do the thinking, but the work was never coming back in.
We were pitching the creative part. So they'd have the TV ad for like Johnny Walker or Axe, and then we'd go, okay, we need to show them it's integrated. Bring in Julian and his team, and then I'd build out all those pieces, and then they'll be like, yeah, we buy the TV. No, none of that other stuff. We don't need it. And I'm like, oh, this is demoralizing.
Yeah. Did you think you were going to lose your job? Did you think like you were in the wrong industry? What was the feeling?
Yeah. So I didn't know yes, all of those. So I had an identity crisis, obviously. I was like, maybe I'm a creative. And so at that moment, I started, because I was really pissed off that I wasn't called a creative or I couldn't do creative work. They weren't allowing me to do creative work. There was like very clear lines, like strategist, creative. You're that side, you're this side.
Especially in the States, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
here we've got an agency of 10 people. That's small, but you'd all kind of pitch in. Even at 150 people, a lot of those lines cross. I've always seen in the States that if you're an influencer strategist, you definitely don't go near the comm strategist and all those things. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Those lines are really hard over there. So I had an identity crisis. I started making art on the side, like
I remember that.
Almost this, the provocative art. Like I had this campaign called, I was like programming sites to add one which was called L Degrees, which was the temperature at the subway stations on a line because it's just so hot there. And so it was like got lots of PR, and it was just like these small kind of micro ideas that I brought to life because I thought I was a creative. I was like, and I was annoyed that no one saw me as a creative. And so I ended up working in the creative department for a little bit to try to do that. But that meant I had to go all the way to the bottom again and then all the way up. And I realized, no, that's not going to be, that's not going to be good. And then we lost Google as an account there. So Google Chrome was like, I want to say 45% of the business. And overnight it went. And so they had to
Wow.
fire 30% or 30 to 40% of the workforce in one day. And so I remember sitting in that office that day, and there'd just be these phones ringing around the office, like, because we were open plan there too. And people would pick up their phone and then walk to the interview room, and then that was it. They would go, and
Really?
you're just waiting for your phone to ring. It was like, yeah, really,
What a
really
horrible,
scary,
yeah.
horrible experience. And then the other thing was like,
Also, desk phones. That's a good throwback to when we had
that
desk
is
phones.
that
Yeah.
is true.
Sorry.
Yeah. And the other thing about it was like, it had no rhyme or reason. It wasn't like the worst people. Like, there were
Yeah.
amazing creative teams going, and I'm like, dude, why did they go? And
Yeah.
I made it through that round, and I kind of thanked my lucky stars then, and I couldn't work it out. I was so confused because I was like, why did they keep me? I haven't made work for 2 years. Why would I
Yeah.
make it through these rounds? And I think that moment I realized that, I was an important weapon in the future of the business. Like,
Yeah.
they knew they had to get integrated. So I think I was probably the strongest in that. I could sense I was the strongest in that side. And actually, I was in this group called engagement planning.
Yep.
And there were 3 or 4 other people in that group. I think 1 or 2 got fired, and then there was one who was at the same level as me, and she left the agency. And my boss had left as well. And so
Wow.
I actually saw that as my opportunity. So that's when about a month after that, I said, hey, I actually want to take the job of head of engagement planning or comms planning. Here's my plan for how I want to run this department and what I'm going to do. And she agreed to that, and she was like, okay, you're on it. And in the background, I'd built up my skills as a strategist too.
Yeah.
I had learnt from these world-class strategists the other side, but I think I'd started to see my worth in that agency and what value I brought. And soon after that, we won. We'd lost 8 pitches in a row as well, so we were on this losing streak.
Really?
That's why we were down. We had to cut the 30%. So we'd lost 8 pitches. I'd worked on virtually every single one of them, and then I'd not made work for 2 years. But I'd sensed this was my opportunity and my value, and I doubled down on comms planning, and then inherited, kind of took over these people, and then kind of built that up. And then very soon after that, we won the PlayStation pitch, which was, really, that was a game-changing moment.
Well, that was going to be my next question, but I'd love to know how did you stay confident? How did you, obviously you lost a lot of confidence through that, but what kept you motivated? Because I love that idea that everything was going to shit. You saw the opportunity to actually step up, build a plan, did your homework, and go forward. What was the motivator to get to that out of this kind of quicksand of an agency situation?
Yeah, I think that I could see that I was being valued still. I think this is a really important thing to know as anyone who works in a service-based industry, especially around your brain, be it creative or strategist, is that you've got to value and see the improvement in your craft and not the final output. And I could see that my craft was getting better, even if the final output wasn't.
Okay.
I'd learnt a lot from these other strategists. I'd learnt the fundamentals, so I could lock that in, and I could see that this is something they couldn't do. The part that I was doing, which was comms planning, which is really how do we bring this idea to life through multiple channels and integrated plans. That was something they desperately needed. And so I was like, I do offer value, from going from feeling like you're sinking to evaluating yourself on another spectrum. And I was lucky, right? Because you can say, hey, if you're the greatest data strategist, but that's not needed right now, then it's
That's
I
just the
was just
market
lucky.
forces and where we're at. Yeah.
Exactly. It was market forces, and then having those cards in my pocket to kind of
Yeah.
play. So I would say that was it. And then I felt like, I think at the time I don't know if it was before this or just around that, I just launched my first course on
Right.
Skillshare and had still been you and I used to blog and tweet back in Twitter days. I haven't touched it in that years. But I think
I just
that
got
was,
back into both actually this week.
oh, really?
Like I
Okay,
started blogging
great.
again, started tweeting. It's weird, but
Go,
yeah.
go. So I think that thankfully that
Mm,
there was other outside forces that were also telling me, no, don't completely lose your head
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
You do have value. And I still hold that till today.
Yeah. That's
You
great.
kind of need like 3 or 4 things going to give you a little bit of self-confidence, a boost, because
Yeah.
there's peaks and troughs.
I think that's so true. And I think just putting a number on it is really important. Like, there's no escaping that agency life has so many ups and downs, and you need some constants, and you need some constants inside and outside the building. You need a great leader, you need a great hobby. Otherwise, you're just not going to get through it. And, you know, I think coming now to the win, you know, you won and led that PlayStation 4 launch. It was like the highest selling console launch in gaming history. What was the moment that things turned?
I think it was winning the pitch was definitely the moment that it turned.
Mm.
The that was obviously a massive morale boost for the agency. Again, I was working with amazing creative directors who went on to lead the biggest agencies in the world. Like the creative director who actually has passed away, Ari Weiss, was the global chief creative officer at DDB later, and then his boss who was the chief creative officer, was John Petroulis, who went on to lead globally Grey. So you've got 2 people who I was working with back then who were phenomenal. And so having them there was amazing. But then also we had on the client side a client who had just stepped into the role and really wanted to prove themselves and wanted to buy ambitious, bold work. And that's a recipe for success. Whenever you get those clients who are like willing to really run with it and they're trying to make their statement. I often call it like the champagne moment, the champagne Khan. Rosé Khan moment, where it's like first year CMOs, you'll see it. Like they always, first year CMOs or first year agencies always like mop up at Khan because they're wanting to put a statement. They're wanting to put a line in the sand and say, hey, I'm now in charge and look at the work I make. So we had one of those.
What a cool, I haven't thought about the rosé moments at Cannes, but you're so right. It's that hunger, it's that ambition. It's like, I've got to make my mark, right? And then those stats came out, most CMOs lasted like 2 to 3 years in their role because they just chase it. Like I've worked with them here, big company, and they just throttle you if you're an incumbent. But if you're the new shiny toy, God, they gift you with all these things.
Yeah.
What did you learn from those creative directors, you know, during that pitch? But like, what do creative directors teach you as a strategist? Like, what were the lessons they gave you?
So the one that I took from Ari was to hold on to the work, like to hold on to that very last minute, because it's like great work happens between like round 14 and round 15 of creative feedback, because that's when most people give up. Right? Like, you know, you're just like at the end, you're just like, oh, yeah, all right, we'll let him put the logo on for 5 seconds, you know, like the last 5 seconds. Or, who cares? It doesn't really bother. But if you cut corners, and it's so much easier to cut corners when you're exhausted and you're so close to the finish line, that's what makes crappy work. So it's really the ability to hold on for the longest and your resilience and resistance when you've got a great idea and your ability to dig in is key. And he taught me that, and it's true. It's great.
And to dig in, you know, like I've definitely, you know, you've just made me reflect on 6 years of work, and I'm like, God, I let go of some things. Yeah, the logo at the end, the change, just put this in because we need to squeeze it into 30, and to do it without, you know, and I'm really happy to say this. I think like working just seeing your work. We've never worked directly with each other, but you're a nice guy, right? Your ego isn't walking through the door. And I think creative directors, they're either one or the other. They're nice enough, and they might give up their idea at the end, or they've got such an ego that they can't see they're holding an ugly baby, and that their arrogance won't let them give it up. How do you explain to people coming up how to position themselves like that? Because I love a lot of the work you do in terms of who are you in the agency, who are you in the corporate? How do you be nice and dig in?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So to understand the dynamics of like a creative and a strategist in an agency, and I'll give this in a US centric point of view because I don't believe it's the same everywhere. But in the US, and it depends on your agency. So BBH, the creative and strategy almost sat on the same level. Creative still had the final word, but they were listened to.
Yeah.
BBDO, creative sat very high, strategy sat very low. And so that is not necessarily a bad thing either in some cases. You need to understand the environment that you're working in and adapt to that environment. Because if you have got a really strategic creative director who there were some really good ones at BBDO, that's fine. You're like supporting them and complimenting them. And so you need to know the dynamics before you kind of walk in. And I think there's nuance. You can even tell where the creative directors come up from. If they're an art director, they usually want more strategic help because they're not really great with the word crafting of words.
Interesting.
Copywriter who's in a creative director, way stronger. They almost want you to push off a little bit and all want to be part of the process.
Yeah.
So I always find out who your partner is and adapt and mold with them. So you know where you can kind of like push and pull on. It's then about understanding like how are you going to get the decisions made and when and where and how do you do that? So like to me, like creative briefs, I used to think were these things that we hand off to creatives and then that's it. The creative director is so involved in my building of the creative brief. Like right now, the way I do a creative brief is like get to strategy territories, sit down with the creative director and the marketing lead and go, hey, where are we resonating around this? Like which one of these three? Not me coming in and telling them the answer. Because if they don't like it, then you've lost them.
So much of it is about do you like this or not? And I think not being afraid to bring it in early and just get their taste and being able to be resilient enough yourself and backing yourself to go, I can rework this. There's still time. It's not all on me.
Yeah.
Is this some of the thinking you brought into BBDO when you built that team? And like, I think one of the models one of the things you looked at was building a model for Bacardi. Is that when you got to test a lot of these things?
Yeah. So I would say there was the rude awakening of going to BBDO, right? So so the difference between BBH and BBDO, BBH in New York. So BBH is a London founded agency. New York was an offshoot. So that's different. Like the satellite versus the hub agency, totally different model. If you're in the satellite, you're not as loved. And so we're only a 100-person agency, which sounds big, small for New York. I went to BBDO, the hub, 800 people agency. So you're just like
800 people.
Yeah. So so it's like, whoa, this is so much bigger. And so then it's like and more obviously more traditional and got more traditional relationships and clients who've been there for like 40 years. So it's stuck in old ways. And so that was a rude awakening. Had to work out, okay, there's way more like diplomacy or politics here because there's entrenched relationships.
Yeah.
And strategy wasn't valued. I've got this, like the very first time I went to present to the CEO, I plugged in my presentation and then I look at my presentation, it's up on the screen. And then behind me on the second screen is the Weather Channel. And I get about 10 slides in and then I won't notice the CEO's eyes just start to like move across to the Weather Channel. And he's like more interested in some bloody weather pattern happening in Buffalo, New York than actually like what I'm presenting. And I'm like, no. And I was used to that. Like I was used to these like very intellectual, rigorous debates at BBH.
Yep.
Where now I realize I have to hit this in under 10 slides or I'm not
Yeah,
going to
wow.
do it. And so it actually made me awesome at my craft because it's like you actually need to be super simple and super sharp and to the point that it's memorable. And so working in an environment where strategy is kind of like not respected yet, brilliant. Like that is an amazing challenge. So I think I learnt to adapt there to begin with. And I realized that not all agencies are the same. I'd like gone through the gamut of 3 different agencies and adapted my style at each. But then when I went to scale, I think the thing that happened is I was put on Bacardi to begin with. And the Bacardi agency, this was again, big political thing. It was a global Omnicom level deal. The heads of creative that were in the agent, that were on the client side. So they had like a creative excellence team. Had come from Droga. And Anomaly. So really independent, hot creative agencies in New York at the time. And they did not want to work with BBDO. They thought you're traditional old TV agencies. We hate you. You know, like we're just stuck in this relationship. We can't wait to prove that you don't know how to do your work so we can go work with someone else.
Yeah, wow.
So that was the first account I was thrown onto and a priority one for them because it's like, okay, Julian's coming in. We're giving him the title of head of comms planning. And I think I took a team of 4 then. We just lost a couple of people. And 3 or 4. And then I had to prove myself on that account. And what I realized was at the same time, everyone else was doing comms planning. How am I going to get this in the agency? So I had to have a win early on Bacardi, which we did. But then I realized I need to create artifacts that everyone in the organization can see and I can start selling through to all the account leads because they were the ones who had the retainer conversations and they could decide which strategy would be on the next year's billing. And so I went round and did like a roadshow of, hey, this is what I've just done on Bacardi. These are the documents you can ask of your strategist that will help deliver. So it was like a comms framework, a blueprint, and, you know, like I think they were the 2 that I was like, that's going to happen on every single piece of work. And then I'm like, oh, yes, I want them. And yes, there is this fear that we're going to lose more money out to digital agencies. And so I was just able to build off there.
Yeah. I think there's such value in productizing professional services internally. Like, I think this is one of those things that's undersold. It's like, well, we all know the process, so this is it and this is what's going to happen. And I think I see a lot of frustrations from juniors when they're like, I don't like how this process works, but there's kind of no proactivity to go, we'll make your own product and try and fix it. Not that they could do it on their own, but to be able to build something, give it some guardrails and go, does your client need one of these, or is this useful in your next workshop? Because strategy can seem ambiguous. It can seem vague. What was when did you realize that if you productize it, it will sell?
Well, I think it was pretty early on with some of those meetings. And then I think the second thing that it was also protecting was the quality, because comms planning or engagement planning was like not known on the other side. Like our product, our actual product to the teams was all over the place. And I was getting complaints from the account leads going, take this person off my account. I hate them.
Whoa.
And they're shocking. They don't know how to do their job. They should be fired. Get them off. Like that was the conversations I had to deal with. And they're like people I liked and stuff. I was like, okay. Again, that's the level of politics that you're dealing with there. One way to fix that is to productize the offering. So you're like, I don't know. I didn't know what half of those people were delivering when they were the comms planner on those accounts. And so I had to get in there and work out, okay, what do they like? What do they not? And then
set a benchmark.
Everyone that.
So those 3 big agency experiences, they really kind of shaped who you were, how you operated, how you started to work with people. And again, if anyone is watching or listening, like you are the master of lessons. Like I still look forward to everything you post because you know how to soundbite it. It's brilliant. Like you're a big inspo. So I think with a lot of conversations I've been having on agency land, it's been, a lot of lessons, but I know you've probably got a lot to draw from. What I'm really interested in is you went on a year-long sabbatical. You said that you weren't burned out, that you were kind of at the top of the game with an amazing team. So why did you leave? What brought on the sabbatical?
So my wife and I have always loved travel, and I I had been like feeling like if we don't do this now, and another friend had done this, like he traveled every 7 years. He took like 6 months off. And when I heard that idea, I was like, I love that. And and when I was working at agencies, Americans notoriously are the hardest workers. Like it comes from a puritanical, like literally the Puritans coming over and, work being the center of everything. So they will easily work through holidays, and they only have 2 weeks holidays a year. But I have creatives who wouldn't take that 2 weeks, where I think Australians are so used to taking holidays. We're like, 6 weeks.
And unless it's overseas, it's not a real holiday and all that stuff.
Yeah. And so I still had that, and I still love traveling. And I was like, let's do this. Like, Amber, let's do this. We've got to do it sooner. We can come back here. And so I just felt like, let's go. Let's do it. And so there was no better time to do it because we were always going to find excuses around what's going to happen, like why we won't do this. And so we did it. And I think the change was, instead of moving back to New York where there was a lot of agencies, I moved to LA where there is agencies.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to try to get client side. I was really interested. I was like, hey, I wonder if I can get client side specifically at a scale up, at a tech scale up, because at that moment, that seemed like the best thing to do. Like everyone seemed to be doing that. It was 2019.
Yeah, it's a good year for equity.
Yeah, good year for equity. And like that was, I think I was going into peak. Now they're like 996. Have you had this 996? The hours, it's like the Chinese work ethic of not from 9 to 9, 6 days a week. That's the new tech pro world. But
that sounds awful.
Yeah, which is now grind culture. But 2019 was peak leisure. Like you're going to get paid a lot of money. It's going to be like easy work, life-changing work. Like everything just looked amazing on that side of it. And as you said, equity, this is the way you're going to get like paid a lot of money and, like make it. And so I went to LA and I was like, I'm going to land this job. And I'm going to land that, or I'm going to freelance to begin with and try to do both. And I thought I was just going to like land on my feet. It was just going to happen. Like I was going to like get a job. So I kind of like reached out to a couple of places and startups and stuff and scale ups. I just couldn't get any calls. I didn't even get an interview. I was like, what's wrong? And I was like, oh man, this sucks. And so at the same time I was freelancing and I started freelancing as well. And I was starting to pick up jobs in agencies, and then education became really like people wanted me to teach, and they had seen what I'd done at like my first job was with DDB Chicago, and the old CSO, the CSO there, Trisha Russo, was the CSO at Atlanta BBDO when I was in BBDO, and I'd helped her out, but I'd helped her out 3 times. And this is a really interesting story because I think you think when you go freelance, the work you're going to get is going to be from your internal inner circle, like friends helping you out and stuff, or you think It's not. It's always like the weak network, like the person who's heard of you or 2 to 3 times. And like, I'll do anything for Trisha now. Like she's like solid in my book because she was the first door that opened for me, and you never forget that first door that opens.
100%.
And it was just a really interesting lesson to me because Trisha said, hey, I really loved all the education stuff you were doing, because at that time in BBDO, I'd got 17 people in at New York, but I was going for global. I was like, I want to lead this globally. So I was bringing in all the other agencies that was doing training all around the world and stuff. And she really liked that. And she said, come train the DDB strategist. I was like, okay. And then I remembered my days back in Skillshare. I'd done the Skillshare class, and I was like, this is really good. So I was like, maybe I should do this again. And I had the newsletter and stuff. So that's how Strategy Finishing School started, or it was previously known as Planning Dirty Academy.
Yeah, Planning Dirty, still great frame. During that sabbatical, you read Rick Webb's book about starting an agency, and your reaction was no. And I think I read that your fiance at the time, Amber, her reaction was that it was her life's calling. She started an agency, you didn't. Walk me through what was that fork in the road for both of you and talking about it.
Yeah. So, it's an amazing book. I love Rick Webb's book on this. So
what's it called?
It's a really clunky title. It's like
I've even in my notes I've got Rick Webb's book.
Yeah, how to start an agency in the digital age or something, or the digital.
It's a bad title.
It's not good, but it's an amazing read on agencies, especially if you want to get perspective. Pretty much the story is he like burns the hell out. Like he started Barbarian Group, which was really hot when I was going through.
Yeah.
And it sounded amazing. And he talks about all the way through to selling. And I think he sells for a multiple, like a normal multiple of whatever it was, but it wasn't a lot of money for the amount of effort and lean years. Like he's like completely burnt out. I forget. I don't know. I don't want to say it. I feel like there was actually personal life took a massive hit. I can't remember what, because it's been 6 years since I've read it, but personal life took a hit, and then everything else. And it was just like, why did I do this? Like the cost of it's so high. And even when he sold it, it just wasn't even worth it. He's like, his mates who had worked finance jobs were still making more, even though he had sold one of like the hottest agencies in New York.
Yeah.
So I read that and I was like, again, you referenced my parents at the start of like making money. And I was like, that ain't it. That's not right.
Yeah.
I was reading Rick Webb's book, but at the same time, I was reading a book by Alan Weiss, who was the strategy consultant. And look, it's really cheesy, that book. It's like really bad.
Is that the old school one? Like it's like how to be a consultant almost?
Yes. And it's like I feel like it's talking about his sports car, half the book and stuff like that. But it's actually got really good advice in there. And so that like lit me up and made me think, no, that the consulting path's better for me. And I loved it. I started it, and then the funny thing is like 9 months later, I was consulting to the brands that I wanted to work for, like Meta, Apple, Disney, Uber. Like it was just like amazing. It was like, and that was where I wanted to be when I started, and I couldn't get it. But then consulting, I was like, they're bringing me in and just like, please. And so that was eye-opening in itself. You'll get there in different paths, in different ways.
It's such a nice, I don't know, it's so different than everyone else. Like I read 2 books and they showed me what I needed to get. Like it's like you can simplify such complex things. It's such a nice, well-learned thing to do and they've both got horrible titles. I just looked at the first one. It's even worse. It's Agency, Starting a Creative Firm in the Age of Digital Marketing. Probably, and then Alan Weiss's book is Getting Started in Consulting. Like again, the books you just walk past or whatever they are.
Yes, totally. And Alan Weiss's one, I think he's got another one that has millionaire in the title or something. That was the one, millionaire consultant or something. I'm like, yeah, right.
Okay, I'll look
I was like, oh God, yeah.
What is it that teaching gives you that being a consultant didn't or doesn't? Like it's such a specific shift. I love it. 2019, that year where I literally started to get Double Star, the idea was consulting and teaching. COVID-19 happened 3 months after. Double Star was born out of it. Great thing to come out of it. But I knew I wanted to teach. But why did you want to teach?
So teaching I always saw a symbiotic relationship. I think that's the word for it, between teaching and my craft of
Yeah.
consulting. When I taught, it required me to reflect on my process and how I actually got to my answers.
Yeah.
And that made me a better strategist. And when you have to reflect and teach someone, you're literally defending your process,
Yeah.
because I didn't get given, like, I learned some of the fundamentals, but I was never given a book of like, hey, here's what to do, blah, 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 step one. A lot of it, I had to like really do a lot of critical thinking and deep thinking around it.
Mm.
And that has made me really good at I feel like really good at my craft, because
Yeah.
now I can go into any room and I can confidently defend a piece of my work
Yeah.
behind why that works fundamentally. And I
Yeah.
think now, in an age of AI where you can get the answer, but can you defend it? That's
Yeah.
so powerful. So
Whoa.
understanding the fundamentals is like key.
That's huge, man. Like that, there's posts and there's books in that. Like, you know, you can find the answer, but can you defend it? I fucking love that. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. Wow. I'm now literally going to
Take
say
that.
that to
Yeah.
everyone I meet tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, you, your parents told you that you'd be washed up at 45. You're living in Portugal now. You're teaching strategy for a living. You didn't start the agency that, you know, they told you to start. What has this cost you? What have you traded along the way, if anything?
Yeah. Uh, I would say that I've probably traded by living overseas and being remote.
Mm,
There's definitely been a cost, which would have been my network,
mm,
and like, I guess, like power or gravitas
yeah,
within the industry. Where I was in New York,
mm,
if I'd stayed on that path, I would be, now CSO at least, or I don't even know. I would have been in the 2020s. I definitely would have been in the CSO role,
yeah,
and my network would be way stronger.
yeah,
You would have continued to grow I would have continued to grow my network with the people, and you grow up, and this is like the graduating, there's like this graduating class you
yeah,
have of like graduating class of our year, like people who you're working with now are going to be the directors and
yeah,
and CEOs of companies in 10, 15 years time.
mm,
So by moving to Portugal, I cut off a lot of my network in that higher, powerful world where,
yeah,
like, I cut off my opportunity to have those connections and grow. It's probably to grow more
mm,
of those connections with the future leaders of
mm,
America's biggest companies, and
yeah,
probably in that as well, the work. Like, now my work, I don't get the opportunity to work on those big campaigns because I was working on Super Bowl commercials. I haven't worked on a
fuck,
Super
man,
Bowl
yeah,
commercial since 2018. Now,
yeah, right.
I might, like, I still can as like a strategy consultant, but it would
But the
be it,
ownership isn't there.
well, it'd be way hard. It'd be way harder. So
Mm,
it happens from time to time where they say, hey, let's bring in a gun freelancer team. And I
mm,
get positioned with a really high level creative director, ECD, CCO,
yep,
who's now out on his own.
yeah,
But usually for big agents, for big brands, and I totally get it, you want the confidence. If you're making a Super Bowl ad, that takes a
mm,
lot of bravery to say, hey, it's actually these two people who are going to crack it,
yeah,
not this agency like BBDO or your Drogas or Wyden Kennedys, where it's like, I know they've got a track record of it. So
yeah,
I'm losing the opportunities to do that. That's the cost.
yeah. Mate, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. Like, I learned so much more about you, and I've known you for a while. you still honestly inspire me every day. I love your videos. I love that you can walk around Lisbon holding your mic and just spitting this. I'm like, it's like he's freestyling this, but it's so perfect, mate. I'm in awe every day.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited we could connect again as well. Because it's
Yeah,
been
man.
ages.
Well, look, next time you're back in town, let's sort out what we can do. Thanks, buddy. Agency Land, a Survivors podcast, is hosted and produced by me, Jai Smith, founder and head of creative and strategy at Double Star Co. Our intro track, Crash and Burn, featuring North Lanes by Phase One, used with the kindest of permissions from Fat Cat Music. Special thanks to Carla Munn and Jaron Norton for the art, design, and motion. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, leave us a review, and share it with somebody navigating agency life. Until then, you're good, get better, and stop asking for things.